But my pain wasn't a pain that would come and go. It was there. It never shut off, not for a minute, not at nighttime, not for anything. And I had a really hard time being understood, like explaining that it never stopped. With MAID, it gives me the opportunity to do it with dignity, to have my family there, to have it not be something traumatic.
The Completed Life Initiative presents Voices of the Completed Life. In each episode, we share unprecedented conversations at the heart of the human experience. Our hosts dive into honest dialogue about mortality, loss, and grief, as we hear firsthand from individuals who seek to avoid life-limiting maladies in a body that may no longer serve them, and who instead aim to celebrate their lives as completed. These are stories that may challenge and surprise you. These stories are worth listening to. These are Voices of the Completed Life. Our host for this episode, Sarah Kiskaden-Bechtel, MBE, is the inaugural program director for the Completed Life Initiative, who brings with her 13 years of experience in bioethics. Ms. Kiskaden-Bechtel is an innovative and strategic problem solver who has devoted her career to untangling oft misunderstood and oft stigmatized issues at the heart of human experience. Her expertise ranges from researching the impact of cultural traditions on the spread of HIV/AIDS in Swaziland to facilitating a CDC award-winning clinical research study in tuberculosis control at New York City public health clinics. In addition to directing the Completed Life Initiative, Sarah teaches as associate faculty in the Masters of Bioethics program at Columbia University, serves as a member of the Carson Tahoe Health Institutional Review Board, is editor-in-chief emeritus of Voices in Bioethics, an online journal, and is a member of the Empire State Bioethics Consortium. In this episode, we will meet Cheryl Romaire. Cheryl lives with 2 autoimmune-triggered inflammatory spine diseases, as well as numerous related conditions, all of which cause serious neurological symptoms, the most present of which is a constant, electrifying pain. While Cheryl has been doing her best to cope with this pain, she has been approved for medical aid in dying in Canada, which she intends to use as a last resort. Elements of Cheryl's story have previously been covered in the Canadian press, including a documentary produced by Veracity for City TV, which is linked in the description of this episode. We will learn from Cheryl what it is like to live with pain that she knows will only get worse with time. Cheryl shares what is most important to her and why she is so grateful to have this last resort option available to her. And finally, what she is expecting from her end-of-life experience. We now return to Sarah Kiskaden-Bechtel's conversation with Cheryl Romaire.
Hi, Cheryl, and welcome to our podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's begin. How are you feeling today?
Today, better than I was. The last week, I've had a lot of high pain days in a row. I've been unwell since October. It's been worse. The autoimmune sickness part has been worse. So even when my pain has stayed stable, the illness part hasn't, and it's been difficult. It makes pain harder to handle when you're sick. It's all connected together. So since about mid-October, they think it is vasculitis, a form of vasculitis, but it's been causing some really strange and not fun side effects. It's the tissue in my sinuses is dying. I actually have a big hole in my septum, similar to what people would get who use drugs. That was really concerning. For about 6 weeks, it was growing. So that was scary. It stopped growing for the most part for now, but that and the illness part that came along with it, some horrible skin rashes, Ivy skin rashes that leave scabs, and it's uncomfortable. So but I always fake like I'm doing okay. I'm really good at faking that I'm doing better than I'm doing. That sometimes works against me.
Well, we women, I think, are trained culturally to, put a smile on our face regardless of the level of pain that we have that day.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear you, and thank you for being so honest and vulnerable with where you're at right now.
I try not to complain about it, I guess, but I still, yeah. I think maybe I don't share as much with my family anymore as I should, just because I think they must be tired of hearing about it. Yeah, it's been more difficult the last few months than I had a few good months before that. When I say good, I mean less horrible. I never mean good. Someone else's standard of good is not my standard of good.
You described this pain as beyond anything you've ever experienced. Can you describe the kind of pain that it is like so we can better understand what you have been going through?
Yeah, one of the hardest aspects of my pain is that it doesn't come and go, that I don't get a break. It came and it's there and it has never gone away. And there have been 4 or 5 flares that I've had where I thought it was as bad as it could possibly get. I couldn't comprehend of pain being more severe, and then it would get worse. And then I would have to adjust. Oh, there was pain worse than that. This is the worst pain that I can comprehend. And the kind of pain that I'm talking about, it feels like it's coming from, there's a crushing pressure in my tailbone, and it feels like it's emanating from that spot, the nucleus spot, I call it, where it feels like it's about the size of a golf ball, and all my pain emanates from that spot. For me, that spot is over my left SI joint, so in my tailbone. And it's a pain that radiates. It's an electrical, icy, burning pain. It's a pain that drugs don't touch. There were about 10 minutes once on one of my visits to the emergency room. There was about 10 minutes where I was so loaded up on drugs that my pain actually went down a little bit, and then it went back up. And that was the only time that I can remember ever having a break. And the amount of fentanyl that I'm on now is more than what my aunt had at end stage cancer. And it doesn't help. It doesn't take away the pain, I should say. It does make it a little bit less, but it doesn't help. So I'm not sure if it helps people to understand the kind of pain I'm talking about, but it's 24-hour fentanyl, 24-hour hydromorphone.
That sounds like so much to deal with, Cheryl. Your description of electrifying, burning pain is vivid and palpable. When did these symptoms originally start?
I guess we should go back to 2010. I had some back pain in 2010 and had back surgery. And 6 weeks after that surgery, I was dancing at my sister's wedding. I was great. I had some mild chronic pain for the next 7 years, but I was great from 2010 till 2017. And then in October, the few months leading up to October, but October is when things suddenly got much, much worse. My pain changed, and it became the kind of pain you would go to the emergency room for, like that level of pain. And I couldn't get treatment. I couldn't get seen by anybody. I could access nothing, really. When I started my fight for MAID, I was fighting for treatment in MAID at the same time. I just knew that things couldn't stay how they were. And how they were was I went from complete independence and freedom to I couldn't get in and out of the bathtub by myself. I didn't have the strength to pick up a jug of milk by myself. Sorry. My son used to have to pour the milk into smaller jugs in the fridge so that I could pick them up to pour in my coffee. And I was 41 years old. And I lost 40 pounds, and most of my hair fell out. It went from being waist length to shorter, it went up to shorter than my ears, just gone in the span of a couple months. And I was sick, really, really sick. And the pain was that pain level that I would go to the emergency room for, but I was left at that pain level, and that was it.
So you went to the emergency room, and what did the doctor say there?
Well, the emergency room helps with the pain for a few hours, load you up on drugs and then send you home. But my pain wasn't a pain that would come and go. It was there. It never shut off, not for a minute, not at nighttime, not for anything. And I had a really hard time being understood, like explaining that it never stopped. It still hasn't. The best I can hope for is to make it a bit less for periods of time. But no, I went to my doctor. I tried to be seen by a specialist. I was seen by a specialist, but I never received the results of any assessment. And that all led to 2 complaints through the College of Physicians and Surgeons, in which 3 doctors were found negligent. It took me 2 years to prove I didn't get access to treatment. And then it took me a year and a half to try and access treatment again. And at the end of that all, I still didn't get it. It became almost a part-time job for 4 years. It took me to do these complaints through the college and to try to get a referral through to be seen by a spine specialist, and also to get a diagnosis. From 2017 to 2019, I didn't have one. I was treated like I had back pain, and I had back pain before, and this was not back pain. I was dying. I felt like I was dying. I looked like I was dying.
And what was their diagnosis?
The diagnosis that I finally did get was the adhesive arachnoiditis, which is chronic inflammation of the layer surrounding your brain, cauda nerve roots, and spinal cord. So that kind of inflammation causes a whole host of systemic problems. It basically triggered a full body meltdown where I went from healthy to, if we started from head to toe, I could almost list something going wrong with every part of my body. I saw close to 20 specialists in 2 years before I then received a diagnosis from a rheumatologist of non-radiographic axial spondyloarthritis, which is the disease that turns into ankylosing spondylitis. More people recognize that name, but those 2 diseases are on the same spectrum. They're very similar.
So now I'd like to explore your process with pursuing Made in Canada on track 2, and what that has been like and how it's evolved.
So the first time I requested Made was in 2019, and I did that knowing I would likely be denied, but you have to ask for it first and be denied. So when I did request Made, then I fully meant it. I wanted it. I was ready for it. But I was denied because I didn't have a reasonably foreseeable natural death. And so then I started advocating for that. I was asked to write my story for the Senate, for Dying with Dignity, to give to the Senate as part of their information package. And so I got 1,800 words to speak to the Senate. And that felt good. I felt heard for the first time. And then after that, Bill C-7 passed and then changed in March 2021.
Well, it allowed track 1 and track 2, so adding.
Yeah, it took away the need for the reasonable, foreseeable natural death. And I knew that I met the requirements in every other area. You must have a grievous, I think is how they say it, a grievous condition, disease, or illness. And you have to be in an advanced state of decline that cannot be reversed. You never have to have tried anything, but you have to know what all your options are and have given reasonable thought and hopefully tried things. But in 2021, my pain was worse than it was. It had been getting worse and worse and worse over time. And when I made the documentary, I knew that it was coming, and so did my son. And I think the rest of my family was in some denial or hoping it wouldn't. But I requested MAID again in June of 2021 and was approved. And that changed everything for me.
What did it feel like to be approved finally?
People talk about this physical weight off their chest, but that's really what it was. I didn't know how much the fear of being abandoned at my crisis pain level had been affecting me until that was gone. It really was affecting me. It affected everything. It affected my relationships with my family, with everybody. It affected every aspect of my life. This pain, it had taken over everything, and I couldn't live that way anymore. And I carry that approval, and the fear is gone. The fear of being left that way is gone. So it does feel good. It has felt good always to have that with me, I guess.
Is it reassuring to have in the back of your mind because you're approved, and do you have the medication in your home?
No, I am approved. I carry the approval through an agreement with my MAID providing physician. So when I had the 2 assessments, which are part of the MAID process, one of them becomes your MAID providing physician. And so I've kept him since the assessment. Every few months we talk. I keep him up to date on where I'm at, what's going on. And when the time comes that I will choose to use it, I will contact the MAID office again, and then they will set it in motion. I would probably need to do one assessment again just because it's been a while since June 2021. So no, I don't have the drugs to answer that. The MAID providing physician does, and he would have them. It's not, in Canada, very, very few people, I think almost no one has chosen to take the drugs themselves. They choose to have the provider do it via IV. It would be very, very difficult. The meds take an hour to work, can take an hour to work. For me, that would be a very, very difficult hour to spend with my family. The fear that it might not work or something goes wrong, and then you're going to do the IV route anyway. I think it's much less scary to ask somebody to please do this for you, which is what it is. It's not him doing it to me. It is him doing this for me.
That's a beautiful distinction. I'm curious, what is your relationship with your MAID provider? How long have you known your provider, and how has that relationship evolved?
I didn't know him prior to him coming to assess me for MAID. Most of the MAID assessors don't do this as their day job. They are other things. So in my case, he is an emergency room physician, and my second assessor happened to be a psychiatrist. So I got a well-rounded assessment. And since then, he has told me that he's happy for me to take as long as I want to take. And even if it's years, he will be there when I am ready. He doesn't require me to do anything more than I've already done, because in my case, I had already done everything. I still am. I still keep going, though, and still keep trying everything. MAID is my last resort. So he's comfortable with it also being my last resort, but he will be there. So by private agreement between him and I, that he will be my MAID providing physician. When you request MAID, the assessors that follow you, one of them must follow you for 2 years after you request MAID. So stay in touch with you, be reachable, just follow you as a doctor would, a specialist, I guess, but that's not the right word, but to follow you for 2 years. But he will follow me for as long as I need.
That's great to hear. How has it felt to receive that kind of support from your MAID provider?
I couldn't have hoped for better support than that. In a way, knowing I don't have to do anything, it doesn't make it so I don't. It takes away the pressure, I guess. I don't have to be done or ready by this certain time or this certain date, or I must reapply and go through the whole process again. And
Well, that would be so draining, so exhausting, such a burden on you.
it would be horrible, honestly. It wouldn't be something I would like to do again. So I am so glad that he lets me carry that approval.
And your life is truly your choice.
Exactly. I didn't have and don't have a lot of control over my illness or the treatment for it, but I do now have control over how long I can do this for. So when I decide that I can't do this anymore, or when I say it's enough, then it will be enough. And gratitude isn't strong enough to describe how I feel about having that right.
You're listening to Voices of the Completed Life, a podcast brought to you by the Completed Life Initiative. Learn more about the Completed Life Initiative and donate to our cause at www.completedlife.org. We provide groundbreaking presentations about the right to control one's own end-of-life experience. We explore legislative options for expanding the eligibility criteria for medical aid in dying within the United States and look to other countries around the globe in support of the right to die. We empower people to ask, what does it mean to live a completed life? Spread the word about the completed life on social media by using #CompletedLife. And now, back to our episode.
I watched the Veracity documentary.
Yeah.
So I've met your son and I believe a few other of your family members via that video. So I certainly want to get a check-in about how they're doing and the latest with everybody in a moment. I'm just curious, have you watched that documentary?
I did. We watched, my sister and we got to see the documentary a couple weeks before it aired. But my mom and stepdad and I had actually flown to Vancouver on February 28th. So that morning. And then it aired that night. So we actually watched it together in Vancouver in the hotel room. And then I had spinal cord implant surgery the next morning.
Oh, wow.
The surgery that it mentioned in the documentary, I had that the next day, but it worked out. So we watched that. My implant surgeon had actually seen the documentary. So that led to some questions. I have been open though all along about where I'm at. And so there was nothing that surprised him. He just was kind of hoping, like everyone else, that this will fix everything. This will make enough of a difference. That MAID won't be on the table anymore, I guess. Making the documentary itself, I have to say, my son and I had a good time doing that. My family and I did. It forced a lot of conversations to happen that were going to happen anyway, but it made them happen maybe sooner than they were going to. But I am so glad that we made that documentary.
At the end of the documentary and earlier in our conversation, you mentioned you had surgery. How has that impacted or perhaps changed your daily experience?
The surgery that I had is a spinal cord stimulator implant. So what that does is they implanted leads starting at the base of my spine, going up my spinal cord. They're about 8 inches long, and they go up, and they sew them into your vertebrae and anchor them in. And then on the side, it's like a pacemaker. It interrupts the pain signal is what it does. It sends electrical impulses. It's like a pacemaker for my central nervous system. I still feel the pain, but my brain doesn't register it as being as negative as it would be without it. It's very hard to describe. It also feels differently for everybody, so that makes it hard to describe as well. It feels a bit like a Dr. Hose, if you've ever tried that, the Dr. Hose TENS therapy. It feels a bit like that, but much, much softer. It's barely perceptible, the implant. If I had been able to access it sooner, it would have made much more of a difference. So it took away probably 40% of the pain in my left leg, but the majority of my pain is in my tailbone. So it does help with the pain in my tailbone somewhat, but not significantly, not as significantly as I had hoped. It took away the urgency of my MAID request. Without the implant, I would have been done long before now. I would have had maid provided. I was done. I could not do this anymore. I was going to request the maid provision last January, but this became available. The implant became available as an option, and I tried it. Because for me, when I request maid, I need to know that I have tried everything that I could to make it as best as I could. And I need to be able to tell my son that I tried the best that I could. I listened to the podcast, the other Cheryl with the S, and the research she had done into all the ways that she could end her life on her own. And at first I was like, oh my God, is she really saying that out loud? But I had done all that same research. If maid wasn't there or if I had been turned down, I would have done it anyway, is what I think. With maid, it gives me the opportunity to do it with dignity, to have my family there, to have it not be something traumatic. And it will be traumatic. It would be, of course, but not the same sort of traumatic as an unexpected suicide would have.
I'm so glad you got to listen to Cheryl with an S's story. She was so powerful in terms of having those three main criteria for what would make her life worth living. And on the other side of that, if she couldn't make those criteria, what would make her life feel completed?
I remember I was listening to that, and when she was talking about her gardening, doing her garden and stuff, and I thought, I judge my life the same way.
So do you have your own criteria?
I do. I had never actually thought about it before, though, and written it down as quite as eloquently as Cheryl had. But the things that are important to me are walking my dog. I walk her myself once a day, and my son walks her twice.
What's your dog's name?
Chappie.
Aww.
Chappie, even. She's my dog, and I have to do that once a day, no matter what. And I'm lucky. I mean, a fly could walk her. You could walk her with one finger holding the leash. She's that easy. So I can, thank goodness. But it's still difficult. People don't think about the 50 steps it took to put my boots on and my coat and get the leash and the poo bags and get out the door, squat down to pick up the poo, rise back up again. It's 800 steps people with pain don't think about. And I want to say, it sounds kind of goofy to say, but also scooping the litter box is something that I do by myself every day. And I take pride in never asking my son to do that for me, because it gives me purpose. It gives me a sense of pride in that I have done something myself today, and something as little as it is. That's something that if I couldn't do that or someone had to do for me, it would really bother me.
Maybe some people would say, oh, the litter box, they would give that up, but it's part of loving them and taking care of them.
Yeah, it's doing it with pride and just having pride in, being the mom, I guess. And I've, exactly like you said, I've looked after them, is what it is. It's not the chore itself. It's I've looked after my animals myself, and that's important to me.
Are those the two main features of your criteria for a completed life?
For me, judging my quality of life is kind of a gray area, whereas the pain is maybe not as gray. It's not black and white, but I think that eventually it will be that the pain becomes too much again, and that will be what makes me decide to request maid. It would be the loss of that autonomy of doing those little things for myself would affect that decision as well. But the physical pain for me is a big one, is the big one.
Something your son Austin said in the documentary that was very poignant to hear. He said, pain is subjective. It doesn't communicate to you what my high level of pain might mean, but I see it every day.
How is Austin doing, first and foremost?
He's really good. He is so easygoing. He's such a chill, relaxed guy. I don't know how he came from me. I'm more high strung. I'm not chilled and relaxed. He is so relaxed and he takes it all in stride, really. And what he has said to me, and we don't talk about it a lot, but we have talked about it, of course, more than I have with anyone else. And he has said to me, when you are ready, I will support you. He would, of course, choose for me to live as long as possible. But the word is live. And it's been 5 years. And pain is very isolating. It makes your world very small. I'm a really happy person. My world is happy. I laugh a lot. It's kind of surprising, honestly. I'm happy, but I guess my cousin said to me, how could you, and my cousin didn't understand at the time. He said, how could you choose to end your life when you could choose to just live it? You have that choice to live it. How could you not choose life? And I told him, if living my life was one of my options, I would choose that. But it isn't. That is not one of my options that I have. And he said that really put things in perspective for him. Me saying that flat out is, that isn't an option. I will never not have pain. It will never be better than it is now. So from here, it only gets worse. It's a real way of, I keep it real. I can't pretend that it's going to magically get better later. That's not what happens. It's progressive and degenerative. My mom has an amazing sense of denial. Seeing my mom in the documentary was the first time I had heard her speak openly about it, because she has been afraid all along that to show support would seem like she wanted me to do it, I think is what she's afraid of, or what she was afraid of. But I've since told her it's not. You wouldn't be. That's not how I feel. It's not the same thing at all.
Well, as you said earlier, it's made as the last resort option. And you seem so resolute in that. It's really great to see that, because people might criticize the options that have made and say, well, it's just an easy way to, not live life, not embrace life's challenges. But you are living life with challenges, and you're living life to the fullest extent possible. And yet you acknowledge bravely how you need made as a last resort option, sure, but as an option so that you can have dignity.
Exactly. Yeah. Having that there.
In the work that we do at the Completed Life Initiative, we often talk about different perspectives and experiences of an end of life experience. And have you expressed or talked about with your son or your parents or other family members or friends, if you've had that conversation of perhaps final moments of experience, or whether that is a conversation that remains to be had?
I have had that conversation with my son, with my sister, with a lesser extent with my mom. I've had that conversation with my stepdad, though. He's much more open. My mom and dad are very supportive, but not as open to hearing about that. They just can't. But for me, I have picked out some pictures that I would like at my memorial. I've picked out a song that actually 2 songs now, the 2 songs I would like to play. So I've thought about my after death moments. As far as my end of life moment, I did ask my family, would you guys want to be there? And they do. My mom would be there. My stepdad would be there. My sister, brother-in-law, and my son. I don't know whether my daughter or my dad could, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. So I have brought it up. As far as what that day would actually look like, I've only talked to my sister and my son about that, but we have had that conversation. What would happen? Yeah. What it would look like to me, and I'm okay sharing it. It would be something really simple at home here. I would like to donate my organs, except you must have made provided at a hospital if you're going to donate your organs. And that changes things for me, because then I could not have my family there. So that unfortunately changed that for me. So I won't be an organ donor, but I would be at home in the living room just with my family around me. And it would probably be something that is scary, but so well thought out.
Yeah, it's something that is on the horizon, but it's not here yet. And your son was brave to acknowledge that fact of we all acknowledge that death is an inevitability, and we acknowledge our own mortality, and yet when that might be something to embrace as an experience is yet to be determined. And so it's on the horizon, but the horizon is far away. So last August, we had the Completed Life Summer Arts Festival, and we screened a film called Moon Manor about a man who's diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and he is approved for MAID. And of course, in the States, Alzheimer's would not be something that would make someone eligible for MAID. But in the movie, he's eligible. He gets the prescription, but he has to self-administer. So he throws his last party. And so he brings everyone from the neighborhood and has a lot of confetti and glitter and a disco ball. And it's a great film. It's powerful. He wrestles with his own doubt. And I won't spoil the rest of the film for you, but just in terms of how someone has portrayed this day, it was really beautiful and touching.
Yeah, that's what he wanted to do, and that's what he did. Yeah, I think that I would do something not on that scale, but before the May Day itself with my family, I would do something that would mean something to me before that, because you can't be there after. You can't be at your own memorial afterwards, or celebration of life, or whatever it's going to be. It's jokingly, I want to hear all the good stuff you're going to say about me after I die first, is what I said. But I don't actually mean that. But MAID gives you the opportunity to be prepared, and your family to be prepared as well, to not be taken by surprise or shocked, or have to watch a bad death, or, nobody should have to be doing that kind of research, looking into ways to end their own life without trauma. And I wish that they would pass this legislation everywhere. It's not just for people who are terminally ill as well, but for people who are suffering, because a lot of those people, they're just being put in situations that they can't cope with.
There's certainly a lot of work to be done, and we're working as fast as we can. So I certainly acknowledge that there's so much more that can and hopefully will be done in the future. But especially from the vantage point of being here in the United States, looking to you in Canada, it's you guys are leading the charge. So we're grateful for how far, you've really set the example for all of us.
Well, thank you. It's I agree. I think that it's really forward thinking what Canada has done with MAID. I hope that a lot of other countries follow suit. It's critical. I mean, this needs to be there. And I'm not sure if this is politically correct to say or not, but we're not asking for permission. We are asking for help not to mess it up, not to make a mistake and create a horrible death when maybe, it didn't have to happen that way. It's just, MAID takes away all those elements, all those fears of having to even think of that. I am grateful that I have it there.
I'm so grateful for you being willing to share so openly with me today, Cheryl, and with us at the Completed Life Initiative as well. And your story will make a difference.
I hope it does. Sharing my story, it gives me a sense of purpose. It makes the suffering not be for nothing. I'm going to have that pain anyway. I had that pain anyway. I will suffer no matter what. So if I can at least do something good for someone else, make it better for them, then it's not for nothing. So, I hope you guys keep up the fight as well. Dying with Dignity was the organization I reached out to here in Canada. And without them, I would have kind of just been lost and not known what to do or what to do at that point, really. They're the ones who I asked about, is this even a thing? And they said, well, yes, it is. And I said, but I don't think I would qualify. And they're the ones who told me, you won't know until you try. And they supported me through that. So organizations like yours and like theirs is critical.
You've just heard the story of Cheryl Romaire. We would like to thank Cheryl for her strength and resolve in sharing her story with us, and for her efforts to advocate for assisted dying in Canada. Several items mentioned in this episode are linked in the description to continue Cheryl's story, such as the World of Champions map, published by the World Federation of Right to Die Societies, as well as the documentary by Veracity, which features Cheryl as well as her family. If you would like to share a response to Cheryl Romaire's story, please feel free to reach out to us on our social media platforms at Completed Life. Additionally, if you are interested in sharing your story of a completed life on this podcast, whether for yourself or a loved one, please reach out to us via email at info@completedlife.org. This has been Voices of the Completed Life. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us at www.completedlife.org. That's completedlife.org, where you'll find extensive video content regarding resources on aid in dying, featuring discussions led by expert clinicians, bioethicists, policymakers, and end-of-life doulas. At the Completed Life Initiative, we advocate for a person's right to direct their own end-of-life care. Take control over your transition, your life, your choice.